Okay, it's time for the part of the lesson where I read the Cindy 500 story. Each week we'll read a Cindy story and we'll learn something about the lesson from her. Cindy can sometimes get herself into a lot of trouble. You guys can choose if you would like to draw a picture of the story or if you would just like to sit back, close your eyes, and imagine it. Cindy 500 was a race car and she loved it. She would not change who she was for $1,000,000. Hearing the roar of the crowd, the burning of her tires against the pavement, the zoom, zoom sound as she whizzed past other cars, she would never give that up. Her favorite part of the week was the big race. Though she did enjoy practicing for it and warming up, she really loved earning a new decal from her sponsors. And as last week, there's only one part of her week that Cindy hated. And I mean hated. Each week, her mother and father sent her to the store to get family groceries. They would write a list, hand her some money, and she would have to leave her beloved racetrack. Unfortunately for Cindy, it was that time of the week again already. But this week, she was very careful to drive slowly. She did not want a repeat of last week. She kept her speedometer right at 25 miles an hour. She smiled with a little pride, but as she looked up, she noticed something that made her upset. No one else was going the speed limit. They were all driving past her like she was a little old rusty Ford. She tried to not speed, but she just couldn't resist for long. She looked carefully about to make sure there were no police cars patrolling the area. When she saw none, she sped a little, just a little, only 35. But there were still others going faster than her. She stopped at a red light and sighed. Maybe it wasn't so terrible to speed. After all, everyone else was doing it, and the police weren't there to see. Maybe they'd forgotten about the speed limit. She could see that the light was about to turn green. Next to her, a black Mustang revved his engine at her. She raised her eyebrows and grinned. "You couldn't beat me if you tried." "Go on, green," the Mustang challenged. As the light turned green, both cars put the pedal to the metal. Cindy felt the breeze blowing over her and held back the urge to honk with excitement. This was just what she was made for. As she sailed over a hill, a police car came out of an alleyway and switched on his lights and siren. Cindy and the Mustang's tires squealed in protest as they slammed on the brakes, trying to look as though they had been going the speed limit all along. Cindy's heart pounded. As she held her breath, she looked in her rearview mirror to see if the policeman was going to choose to give her the ticket. Suddenly, it did not matter if everyone else was doing it. It didn't matter if it seemed okay at the time. Knowing there was a police car with his lights on behind them made her realize they were doing wrong. 1,000 times more than before she saw him. She pulled to a stop and sighed with relief when the police car continued to move and got behind the black Mustang. It's the same with God's law. We can't just keep on going on sinning and explain it away by saying everyone else is doing it. I have a scripture I'm going to read us about this. Psalm 10, verse 11. "The wicked think God has forgotten us. He doesn't see what is happening." Now we're going to have a couple questions from the Cindy story. Question 1. Did Cindy remember that it was wrong to speed? If you said yes, you got it right. Question 2. How did Cindy justify or explain away the fact that she was speeding this week? Did you say because everyone else was doing it? That's right. Question 3. Did Cindy feel differently about her sin when she saw the police car behind her? That's right, because she knew there could be a consequence for her sin. Question 5. Should we base our actions on what everyone else is doing or by God's standards? If you said by God's standards, you're right. Good job. How many did you get right? Children's Church kids, if you got all the questions right, you can mark yourself for a point on your score sheet.